we're here. Welcome. Good morning. My name is Kriss Gang, and I'll be leading today's service. Today we'll have two of our own members sharing their reflections about the joyous, chaotic, and sometimes stressful holiday season. Sharing memories today will be Dee Dee Cam High on video and Judd Dolphin in person. Susan has agreed to read one of my favorite Christmas stories. And so I just want to welcome you all here in the room and those of you on Zoom to the LCUUF Sunday service. Hey, we're in the middle of this holiday thing. Our announcements were on the slideshow before the service, and were also sent out by email yesterday with the order of service, not the link to Zoom. Sorry, Zoom folks. Hopefully everyone got that this morning. We continue to offer our service on Zoom each Sunday for those who are unable to attend in person. And now it's time to welcome our newcomers. If you're visiting us for the first time or have returned or reconnected with us after a long absence, we invite you to say your name and tell us where you're from. If you're on Zoom, use the Zoom raise hand feature or just turn on your video and wave your hand. And we'll ask you to unmute. If you're in the room, just raise your hand and we'll start with people here in the room. Or do we have any newcomers, visitors, people that just want to say hi to everybody?
Hi, everybody.
Super.
Hi,
Charlie,
can you hear me?
wait a
This
minute.
is,
And one more hi here. But I also want to say we've been away for 3 months, and it's great being back to all these wonderful people.
Yes, welcome back,
My
Suzanne and
name is
Johannes.
Johannes.
And I'm Suzanne Bjorner, and it's nice to be welcomed back by so many people. Thank you.
Susan Lynn. Over here.
Some way to.
This is my friend Hania from Canada and Poland. She's a member, but she hasn't been here for 3 years since. 2.5 since COVID, and she was too shy to say it, so I'm introducing her.
Welcome back.
Can I say something?
Okay.
Can you
Yes,
hear me?
please. We have
Anyone
somebody
on
on
Zoom,
Zoom
Richard?
to speak to us.
Hi. Ron and Ann Gilbert saying hi. Looking forward to returning in the middle of January for a period of time, and wishing everybody happy holiday season.
Good to see you. Thanks for joining.
Anything else? Anyone else? Good. And just a brief note, we offer a wide variety of services on various topics, various presented by our members, outside guests, as well as our minister, Reverend Matt Alspa. We hope you'll return to sample this variety of thought and belief. And I'm going to wait for the bells. Now, what I've read is when it rings once and then a series, it's calling women to service or men, and when it rings 2 times, pause, in a series, it's the opposite. It's the next. That's what I read somewhere. Yeah, half hour. I think we're good for Willowette. No. That's the final one. You know, living a block off the plaza in Ajijic, I hear the bells a lot. Our opening words this morning are by Gretchen Haley. Calling all who cannot wait any longer for joy, for hope, and some good news, even a little. The time has come, the waiting is over. Here in this time, we have an old story to tell, one that has been shared over and over for thousands of years, but still somehow it remains unheard, still radical, still risky. Breaking through into these days of darkness and cold and division and fear, interrupting the perpetual stories of violence and loss and feelings of powerlessness, into the errands and errors of every day, Christmas arrives, not only to comfort, but to awaken, to assure, and also to stir us up as a new life, a life of peace and justice and courageous love struggles to be born. Wondering if we will yet be the ones who make room in our lives and in our world for the refugee, the poor, the plain and messy sweetness of a newborn baby. If we will take the journey to Bethlehem, if we will be charged by the presence of a love that meets us where we are in the fields wherever we lay, and calls upon us a new journey, a braver and bolder life, believing that it is not too late for strong and gentle people to win, for compassion and truth to have a final say, for the bright light of hope to shine through, even on the darkest night. Come, let us celebrate the good news of Christmas, and let us worship together. Our chalice lighting words today are by Ben Sula. Out of the darkness, light. Out of the light, warmth. Out of the warmth, joy. Out of joy and togetherness, may this flame hold us for the time we are here with one another. Now let us light our chalice with these words we sing together.
Rekindle this light in celebration for the life that we share.
Each week, we take time to remind ourselves that we belong to a community that cares about each other. The sharing of joys, sorrows, and milestones is one way that we practice holding one another in community. We speak what is in our hearts, briefly sharing any significant joys or sorrows in our lives, because there is power in the sharing. We will start with the folks in the room to give those on Zoom a chance to type joys or sorrows in the chat box. First, we'll recall our joys, whatever you may be celebrating, what evokes a feeling of joy or peace for yourself or for others. Are there any joys for the people here in the room?
Oh, I get to be first. And I'm Ilona. I'm going back to the States for the first time in 4 years, and really excited because I'm going to spend time with my niece's little kids, which to me is a real Christmas. I'm hoping not to see every store filled with people with guns. That's my wish.
My name is Lynn, and Gary and I are both really excited because our middle granddaughter is coming to visit us with her Mexican-American boyfriend on Christmas Day.
Anybody else? 4 weeks ago, I fell, but not on cobblestones, at the Gallerias Mall in Guadalajara. And my husband, David, has taken very, very good care of me. And he has helped me do all those things that are hard to do one-handed, like pulling up one's pants.
We all thank you, Dave. Okay, Richard, do we have joys out in Zoom world?
Yes, we do. From Hannah Frederick. I am in Auckland, New Zealand. This is neither a sorrow or joy, but sorry to miss the live Zoom, but I'm in a way different time zone in New Zealand. I came for Howard's New Zealand Memorial. We'll see you at the end of January. Merry Christmas and have a wonderful New Year. And that's it.
Thank you. Now let us voice our sorrows, whatever you may be holding that is in need of our communal healing and caring thoughts. Do we have those with sorrows in the room?
Sorry, I'm way at the back. My name is Sue. I would like to light a candle of concern for Marcia Fowler, who is Kelly's niece. She's given services here. She had a stroke in her ear, and she's in a huge Los Angeles hospital, and they didn't know what to do about it. They had to do all this research to find out how to. This very, very unusual. It's going to be a very long recovery. That she's talking about a year on disability. So please keep her in your prayers.
Hi, I'm Annie. This is more of a concern than a sorrow. One of my dear friends, who evidently keeps her windows too clean, at home walked right into a sliding glass door, knocked her head about, and is afraid she's going to have 2 black eyes and that people will think her sweet fella beats her up.
None of us have ever done that.
Yeah. Just tell her to tell people bar fight.
I know, I have something to say today on everything. My name is still Lynn, and I just have a concern for my little mama. You know, she's 92, and she usually comes to church, but she isn't feeling well this morning, and I think I just wore her out last week. But anyhow, hopefully she'll be back next time.
My name's Tim. This is a request for Herschel Klepper, a friend of mine who was hit while jogging by a car. And he's fortunately okay, except he's in a lot of pain, and he did have his face terribly bruised by the windshield of the car. And so prayers for him. And then this is the second thing for my wife and I. We're getting ready to take a little trip, a road trip, to Mexico City, then on to the Yucatan where my wife has relatives, and just prayers for safety on this trip. It'll be quite an adventure driving, and so thoughts for that. We'll be back at the end of January.
Okay, Richard, do we have Sorrows to share from Zoom.
Yes, from John DeWall, the hanging of young idealists in the name of God by the Iraq religious regime. And that's it from Zoom.
Thank you. And this candle from our care team represents those joys, those sorrows that are not ripe for words, that for now remain in our silent sanctuary of our hearts. We light this candle for all those unspoken joys and sorrows. All right. We have two hymns today. One you should be able to sing along with, the other one work at it. Our opening hymn, It Came Upon a Midnight Clear. This hymn was written by Reverend Edmund Hamilton Sears, a Unitarian minister and an avowed pacifist. He wrote It Came Upon a Midnight Clear in 1849, somewhat in response to the Mexican-American War. In it he says that the call to peace and goodwill to all is as loud on any other day as it was on the midnight of old, if we would but listen in solemn stillness. The lyrics also were written, or the music was also written by a Unitarian. This is one of our claims to the holiday tradition. And I also read that it was Mark Twain's favorite hymn. Please rise as you are willing and able and join me in singing. It came upon the midnight clear.
It came upon the midnight clear, that glorious song of old, from angels bending near the earth to touch their harps of gold. Peace on the earth, goodwill to men, from heaven's oh gracious King. The world is old and stillness lay to hear the angels sing. Still through the cloven skies they come, with peaceful wings unfurled, and still their heavenly music floats o'er all the weary world. Above its sad and lonely plains they bend on hovering wing, and ever o'er the babel's sound the blessed angels sing. And ye beneath life's rushing load, whose forms are bending low, with toil along the climbing way, with painful steps and slow, look now, for glad golden hours come swiftly on the wing. Oh, rest beside the weary road and hear the angels sing. For lo, the days are hasting on by prophets seen of old, when with the ever-circling years shall come the time foretold, when peace shall over all the earth its angel splendors fling, and the whole world sing back the song which now the angels sing.
If you notice the first verse, she sang the original words, and we printed what's in our hymnal. There was some editing when that hymnal was put together, appropriately. Today's reading is by Aaron Powers. It's a familiar scene each holiday, No matter how meticulously the strings of lights were put away the year before, they always seem to come out a tangled mess. Right? What happens to them all through the year as they wait in their boxes? And so the tradition of untangling the lights begins. We unwind them carefully, uncrossing, unlooping wires, stretching them out to their full length, all the while being mindful not to damage the bulbs, which hold so much potential. I find that people aren't that different. We often feel like a jumbled mess of string of lights, tangled up within ourselves, not knowing how to get undone or how to get back to our sparkly selves, especially when the holidays are here. Throughout the year, each struggle adds another tangle to the lights, until by the year's end, we're wound so tightly that we don't even know where to begin. Sometimes we need a little help to sort ourselves out. It's been said that it's easier to untangle a string of lights if you plug them in. The brightness of the little bulbs help guide our fingers through the tangles. It's no different for people. Connecting with friends, family, therapists, or trusted advisors can shine a little light to help us untangle ourselves and to help us stretch out to our full potential. Humans, just like strings of light, are wired for connection. It's when we're wound most tightly that we need the connection most of all. We're at our best when we're plugged in to each other. We find our true purpose and spark with others, not alone, and it's in these connections that we shine most brightly. Let us now do some untangling and connecting of our own as we listen to seasonal reflections from our members. The first of these three reflections this morning will be by our LCUUF member, Dee Dee Kamhai, who's now lounging on the beach in Mazatlan, but she did take time while there to record a video for us. She'll share her early memories of her experiences of the holidays living in an exclusive Jewish neighborhood. I believe it was in Chicago. Dee Dee joins us today via this pre-recorded video. And she also asked me to tell you that somewhere she says she got 8 gifts a night for Hanukkah, but she said it was one every night for 8. Just so you don't think she was... Enjoy.
Hi everyone, this is Dee Dee Kamhai. I'm in Mazatlan this week, and so I'm not able to come to the fellowship this Sunday. So Kriss Gang asked me if I would tell you a little bit about what it was like being a Jewish person over Christmas. So here I go. I've never had a Christmas tree, and it really is strange because when I met my ex-husband, who wasn't Jewish, the first thing I wanted was a Christmas tree. So we went out and bought the tackiest decorations I've ever seen. And of course, they were with the tinsel, well, I didn't realize that you're supposed to do one at a time. So I just threw it on. It did not work at all. He got very annoyed, but I didn't know any better. I never had Christmas before. Growing up in a Jewish neighborhood, it was a lot easier not to have Christmas because most of us didn't. We had Hanukkah, which was different. We had 8 small gifts every night, but certainly not the tackiness and the fun of the lights of Christmas. One of my favorite memories every year, my big family, my 3 brothers and I would pile in the car with my mother and father, and we lived in northern Chicago, so we would drive late at night after the lights went down, and we'd go to Lincolnwood and Glendale and Evanston and just wander the streets really slowly and look at all the wonderful Christmas lights and the decorations. Wonderful experience for us. And of course, the night ended with us stopping at the Milk Pail, which was a great little restaurant that sold milk, but they also had hot chocolate. And it was very, very nice. I think one of my favorite memories, and this is something that I've told lots of people, is I belong to the Jewish Community Center, and every week we had weekly dances. Of course, we did the jitterbug and the hot dances of the day. And I and a couple of my friends insisted that we sing some Christmas carols. Well, the leaders of the Jewish Community Center were a little stodgy, and they said, fine, just as long as you don't mention the word Christ or anything to do with that. So, one song we sang, and I'll sing a little bit for you. In the meadow we could build a snowman and pretend that he is Rabbi Brown. That's what I remember after all those years. I think that, it's a tradition for Jewish people to have the Sunday tradition of Chinese food and a movie. So if we didn't go out for a movie, we stayed home and watched our favorite movie, which is still my favorite. It's a Wonderful Life. I've seen it at least 40 times. My son and I know the words by heart, and we can, oh, I'm bleeding, Bert, I'm bleeding. I think that one of the highlights was also going to Marshall Field's department store. Any of you remember or have ever been there over Christmas? What a beautiful, beautiful department store it was. All lit up. Every single window was spectacular. And there was a huge tree that went from the atrium all the way up to, I think it was like the 7th floor, to the walnut room. And when we were good, we were able to have hot chocolate and a little tasty treat up there. And it was lovely. So, it wasn't as bad as some of you might think. But I do want to wish you all a Merry Christmas now. I love both. I love Hanukkah, I love Christmas, and I love Kwanzaa. So, Merry Christmas. Gracias.
And for those of you keeping track, Happy Hanukkah. Tomorrow is the first day of Hanukkah. Tonight, thank you. We were trying to... I was raised Unitarian. Come on. A quick little aside on that. My boys, when they were little, we were shopping in Kmart, and we were walking by the Christmas display section, and all of a sudden I hear my little 3-year-old voice, "Daddy, who's that baby?" We'll talk about it at home. Did anyone hear that? Yes, and I was fortunate to have been in Chicago one year on business and got to see Marshall Fields, and it is truly spectacular. Susan Miller will be reading a passage from Faces of Christmas Past by the late Bill Home. This is one of my favorite reflections on Christmas, written nearly 20 years ago. I first heard this piece presented by him at a UU service I attended in Minneapolis. He was a wonderful writer and a great speaker. This passage describes how his mother, born and raised in Iceland, was a fanatic about holidays, sparing nothing when decorating, or for that matter, anything related to the Christmas holidays. He describes how when Icelandic traditions did not work for her, or her expectations, she created her own. It resonated to me because it reminded me of my grandmother's. So here's his story.
Thank you, Kriss. Along the lines of being Unitarian, when our daughter Meredith was about 4, she said, "I know Mary's last name. It's Christ." At Christmas, the gavel of tradition bangs on the table to call the house to order. We have always done it this way, so do it now. We have always eaten oysters, lutefisk, ham balls, fill in the blank, so we shall eat them again. In towns like Minneota, the solid front of Christmas habit brought even the atheist to church on Christmas Eve. The Jewish doctor's children acted in the Sunday school Christmas pageant. A Hindu could not have escaped appearing in the manger scene, toasting the holiday afterwards with garishly decorated butter cookies dunked in thin coffee. You should always have a presenter who's a foot shorter than the first guy. Yet tradition, yeah, so am I. Yet tradition anywhere in America, and certainly in the Midwest, is a strangely Jack-led affair. Hardly old enough to qualify a tradition at all, rather only invented procedure. But what about the old country, you ask? Didn't tradition travel over on the boat from Ireland, Norway, Iceland, Belgium? A majority of Minnesotans descend from those stocks, but hardly over a century ago. But traditions seem not to travel well over water. Most traditions sickened in mid-Atlantic and expired shortly after they stepped off the horse cart onto the tall grass prairie. This is a country of interrupted traditions, just entering a difficult puberty to start growing real ones. The physician-poet William Carlos Williams described us well, if a little harshly, as, quote, tricked out with gods from imaginations which have no peasant traditions to give them character, end quote. But at Christmas, my mother Yona tricked out her house with gods that would have astonished even Dr. Williams. And as she would have briskly assured him, she had plenty of character. She might have defined tradition as anything you did once that looked good to you. So you practiced it 40 or 50 times, and then you have tradition. She sewed clothes, and when the clothes wore thin, she adorned them with decorative patches, and then patches on top of the patches. Whatever interested her at any given moment, she surrendered to in excess. When wooden plates captured her attention, she painted 50 for relatives, 50 for neighbors and friends, 50 to sell, though mostly she gave them away, and another 50 for storage under the bed just in case. Not only was her enthusiasm contagious, she owned no resistance to the enthusiasms of others. If a neighbor learned from the radio or a crafts magazine how to make pink swan soap dishes out of plastic dish soap bottles, Yona swung into action and tried a few hundred herself. Her house became the gallery for her projects at Christmas, her favorite season. And the show doubled or tripled in size to overwhelm the cramped little farmstead. Now I'm going to read a long list here of stuff that she decorated her house with. And every time I read something that you have been raised with or exposed to, please raise your hand, okay? Boxes of handmade tree ornaments, painted figurines of Santa, the whole retinue, reindeer, elves, sleighs, a set of wise men and camels, and here, an electrified manger scene with blinking lights, angels of various color and design, dishes and bowls decorated with poinsettias and mistletoe, the embroidered Christmas tablecloth and napkins, rose-mulled napkin rings, wooden plates painted with Christmas motifs, and Yuletide greetings in 4 or 5 languages. Christmas bric-a-brac on every flat surface. Handmade candle holders of maybe 15 designs with scented candles burned nightly for a month. There are smells of lavender, sachet, pine, forest, and spicy cinnamon oozing together in the drafty rooms. And finally, my favorites. The Christmas angels made from folded magazines, shellacked and spray painted to a board-like stiffness, and the pièce de résistance, the Christmas toilet seat cover, with a gay red winking Santa Claus waiting for your hind end. And this came after they got a flush toilet in 1950. There were no subtle earth tones or delicate pastels for Yona. She loved bright, intense, gypsy or Mexican colors: red, hot pink, purple, orange, gold, lime green. These wise men had style. These angels played tambourines, not ethereal harps. In a bleak old farmhouse, on the bleak north crest of a bleak hill on a bleak prairie with the bleakest climate on the continent, this house, inhabited by Scandinavian Lutherans, looked like a Hungarian restaurant decorated for a Chinese wedding. My mother cared little for the theology of Christmas. She was at best a nominal Lutheran. She was faithful to Ladies' Aid and do-good projects, but she was casual in her piety. Her Christmas music consisted of breathy performances of Heimsembol, Silent Night in Icelandic, and Jingle Bells on a Hohner harmonica, and this only after a well-laced Tom and Jerry or two. She loved the festivity of Christmas, the chance to create some light and noise and gaiety at the bottom of the year's darkness, cold, and silence. If you had to live in this God-forsaken place, at least show some evidence of being actually alive. Maybe that's the real kernel of psychological wisdom underlying the Christmas rites anyway. Yona's extroverted nature guided her to stumble in that wisdom unconsciously. What she made was not kitsch. Kitsch implies a consciousness of fashionable taste satirically undermined. Yona invented beauty as she understood it. Her creations connected not so much to her ego as to her affectionate desire to please others. If you admired a piece of her handiwork, you went home with it. As a boy, sometimes overwhelmed by the crowded gypsy camp atmosphere inside the house at Christmas, I kept wishing for more traffic, more guests to do a little thinning and pruning on the collection. It would have done no good. She would simply have swung into action and invented more. The Icelandic Christmas tradition inside her family and immigrant culture evaporated in the New World, except for a few Christmas recipes that were adaptations of food that had already begun to disappear from real old country tables. One ritual function of a tradition is to create connection inside a community. So, lacking Iceland, Yona made do announcing, "This is now tradition, help yourself."
Having lived in Minnesota, I might add that it was often said that the Icelandic, the Norwegians, and the Scandinavians ended up there because it was as dark and as bleak as where they came from. Felt like home. Oh, and by the way, Reader's Digest made the best angels. Our next speaker, Judd Dolphin, will be sharing his reflections about a holiday season he spent with a family in Ukraine while serving in the Peace Corps after he retired.
Thanks, Chris, for this opportunity to share a few memories. I want you to come along with me today. I retired some 40 years ago, maybe 45 now. And after working with social change organizations all my life, and I decided it wasn't time for the rocking chair. I would join the U.S. Peace Corps. And I went to Ukraine for 2 years. What an adventure it was. Now, I want to share with you a little bit of what I remember, my Ukrainian Christmas memories. I'm working with mothers at a nonprofit, a new nonprofit. It's called Hearts of Love. Their mission is to change the way that disabled children, their disabled children, are treated in the community. During Soviet times, they were treated as the flawed ones. They didn't fit the Soviet ideal of strong, healthy comrades. They were shunned. They kept at home, out of sight, no special services, no playground activities, no friends, nothing. But when the Soviet system crumbled, this group of brave and courageous mothers, resourceful too, they said, "Niet, no." They created the Hearts of Love Center. Regardless of disability, physical, emotional, mental, all children were welcome. They were coming out of the closet, if you will, and into the bright light of day. Well, it's Friday. That means Art Day at the Hearts of Love Center. It's become a popular activity to paint with the American. That would be me. Since the holidays are approaching, I make a huge Christmas tree by taping together blocks of copy paper and painting branches with my watercolors. It stood, gosh, like 6 feet tall. I told the children, with the help of an interpreter, that our job today was to make decorations to put on the tree. All ages and levels of ability soon got busy. Some children were very careful in drawing designs. Others mostly did scribbling. No matter, I thought all were handmade, yeah, and all belonged on our tree. I tell my young artists all the time, your art is unique. Claim it with your name. When you sign your name, you are telling the world, look, I made this. I noticed one boy, he has some kind of muscular palsy, and he surprises me. Instead of scribbling, he is so focused and concentrating his attention. And slowly, He's producing a design. Wow. Proudly, he shows it to me. I dig deep into my language learning, trying to figure out what I should say to him. Finally, the words come to me. Atlichna robota. Atlichna robota. Good job. We both smile. As I put away the art supplies, a little girl burst into the room. Chai, chai, she shouts. Time for tea. I follow her down the hall where a party is being prepared. No styrofoam here. There will be china cups and china plates encircling pots of peppermint tea. It's the little girl's birthday. She's 8 years old. Her mother has brought a small cake to be shared with others. It's a very special time at the center. As we settle around the table, a wonderful Ukrainian tradition, a ritual, if you will, is being repeated. People begin sharing birthday wishes. Now, these are not quick cliches like you find on the Hallmark cards. No. The people share stories, intimate stories, about a person's character, talents, and goodness. Each person around the table takes time. There's no hurry. I really do love the way Ukrainians are not embarrassed to share kindness. It's probably a lesson we all should copy. I look at the little girl, as you can see her now. She's wearing a red dress. Now, red is considered the most beautiful color in Ukraine. The little girl is so sweet, and she's beautiful. The gentle words of appreciation accumulate like dozens of gifts, but only more valuable. I'm touched when her older brother speaks. I don't know all of his words. My language learning wasn't that good. But I understand the tone and the body language. He admires and loves his little sister so much. We all should be blessed that way, huh? Soon, it will be New Year's. And for Ukrainians, this holiday, New Year's, is more like our American Christmas, but without all the excess. Huh. It's a family-centered time around a meal. And I'm honored, very honored, to be invited into this family. We're gathering at Babushka's home. Like most Ukrainian celebrations, the living room has been transformed, rearranged to accommodate, actually 4 generations. A granddaughter is so excited to show me the table with all the food laid out. She especially wants me to notice a full, entire roasted chicken. I smile and I take notice, but then I begin to wonder. I wonder why her excitement. A roasted chicken. Could there be some deeper significance? Huh? An entire roasted chicken? What does it mean? Well, I believe that all people carry collective memories. I learned during Peace Corps training that food shortages are a Ukrainian memory. When the Soviet Empire collapsed, there were food lines in front of supermarkets. Not just an off day, but for many months. And during the World Wars I and II, it was the Ukrainian landscape that hosted countless battles. The fertile farmland was scorched over and over again, while families were left, to sift through the ashes. And even more, Ukrainians endured the Holodomor. Holodomor? Have you heard of it? Like most Westerners, I didn't know. I was ignorant. Holodomor. Well, it's a Ukrainian word for death by starvation, slowly. In the early 1930s, Stalin targeted his opposition and he wanted to exterminate them, especially in the farming community. As a result, more than 4 million men, women, and children were slowly starved to death in a man-made famine engineered by an authoritarian regime. Amazingly, we remember the Holocaust lest we forget. But the Holodomor, shamefully, it's hardly remembered at all. Yet, among Ukrainians, they never forget. So maybe there is a deeper meaning, a significance in this collective memory. There's a whole roasted chicken on the table. Lest we forget. Well, we begin our New Year's meal, and the first of many toasts are made. Toasting has a rich heritage in Ukrainian culture. It goes back to Cossack times. These toasts are not quick blessings. They are heartfelt speeches. My family is going to share 5 rounds of toasting. First and second, they want to first welcome everybody. Secondly, they want to honor our friendship that we share together. And of course, there's vodka during each round of toasting. And then the third round is to honor the women, then to honor the men, and finally to give glory to Ukraine. There can be more than the 5 toasts, but for our family, 5 rounds of vodka is enough, huh? As we celebrate, there's a big surprise. A bouquet of balloons is brought to the table by the youngest granddaughter. Everyone is supposed to select a balloon, squeeze it until it explodes, and with a loud bang, out pops a New Year's wish, especially for you. What a splendid activity. It's so simple, so inexpensive, yet magical and a lot of fun. I think we all ought to do that on New Year's. Anya, an older granddaughter, she gives me a handmade card. And let me share what it says. We wish you health so you may enjoy each day in comfort. We wish you love of friend and family and peace within your heart. We wish you beauty of nature, that you may enjoy God's work. We wish you the wisdom to choose priorities for those things that really matter in life. We wish you generosity so that you may share all good things that come to you. We wish you happiness and joy and blessings for the new year. We wish you the best of everything that you so well deserve. As I leave this loving home, it begins, believe me, this is true, lightly snow. I feel nostalgic. Home, family, friends. I have them both here in America. I have them in America and here in Ukraine. It's a wonderful life. I'm blessed. May it be so for all of us. In Mexico now. Yeah. May it be so. Thank you.
Okay, let's take a few minutes. Now it's your turn to share your reflections. What are some of your favorite memories, holidays past, special gatherings, friends, family? Let's take a few minutes, and not too long, because I understand there are cookies waiting to be shared. And then we'll let, if there's anyone on Zoom that wants to share. I have one other quick follow-up to the Kmart Who's That Baby story. Fast forward a couple years, we're at our minister's house. We're out in the kitchen talking, preparing whatever. And we hear this commotion in the living room. We come out here, and here are my two boys playing with the manger kings and Joseph like they're Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Anyone have a quick reflection or brief memory?
Thank you, Susan. First of all, I want to thank Judd for the wonderful memories. And it brought memories from about 80 years ago, during the third year of the Second World War, when Denmark had been occupied by the Nazis for 3 years. I was 3 years old. My sister was 10 years old. And it was Christmas. My parents were decorating a Christmas tree, and that happened in a living room. They closed the doors. It was early in the evening, because in Denmark about 4 o'clock everything is dark at that time of the year. Yes. So my sister and myself, we were waiting impatiently. The big door to the living room was closed while my parents were decorating the tree. And so the doors were open, and this big tree full of lights, this was real lights with candles and decorations and others. And I think our eyes were shining like stars. And perhaps the biggest excitement was, normally we were supposed to go to bed at 8 o'clock, but on Christmas Eve we were allowed to stay up as long as we wanted. We were really excited. So with all the excitement, it always happened that by 8 o'clock we were tired and fell asleep. That's my memory.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Well, I have lots of stories because I lived 35 years over in Europe, but my favorite is the first time I met my Hungarian family in Transylvania. And I had to take several trains from Rome to Budapest, and then it was the Orient Express, which I was so excited. I thought it was going to be Agatha Christie, right? It was a Russian version in 1986. It was very, very barren. I was smuggling in, at the time, about $400 worth of food, fresh meats and sausages and butter and soap and everything. And it was the strangest thing I've ever carried in a suitcase. But when I was on the train, we were checked by the Russians regularly and had a 4-hour stop from the border from Hungary to Romania, even though it was still Eastern European, there was that. And they confiscated everything on the train, all the cognac that people were carrying, that I was UN. I had my UN passport. And I kept waving it at them like it was garlic, you know, and you know, the cross and so they let me through. So I was actually probably one of the few who could ever really smuggle as much in. And then when I arrived, it was about 6 in the morning, and my family was waiting for me. And the first thing they asked me was, "Do you have any coffee?" And I said, "Yes, of course." They said, "Oh, okay, we needed to pay for the gasoline so that we can get home." So there went the first barter, and I didn't realize that the food wasn't going to be consumed specifically, it was going to be bartered. And so we get in the car, and my cousin, who was the first time I had met him, he was 3 years older, he put my aunt and I in the back of the seat covered with furs because they didn't have any heat. And he said, do you like palinka, which is the Hungarian version of vodka? And I said, yes. He goes, "Oh, good. I knew we were a family." So we started off drinking this palinka, going very slowly along the road with these very well-worn tires that could barely move with the gasoline that we bought from the coffee. And then when I got there, I wasn't allowed to stay with them because as a foreigner, I had to pay to stay in a hotel. And so we did all kinds of things. I went on the black market with my dollars, and I bought as much food as I could. All of it was marked UN, World Food Program, and everything else, but it was still things I could buy for them. And then they had saved up the rations at the time, which were very, very harsh rations. There was, 8 eggs, which was going to be the main Hungarian meal, 2 kilos of meat, and so on and so forth. And it was the most joyous Christmas that I've ever spent. And of course, learning how to live there, because we had to go and get the bread, we had to go another place for the potatoes, we had another place for. So all of these things, I just hope you all appreciate that in some respects, things haven't changed much for a lot of the countries, including what Ukraine is going through right now. So, but it was really joyous. And then I illegally slept over that night at Christmas because they said, "You cannot go back to the hotel." Meanwhile, at the hotel, everybody's trying to get the coffee off of me, so.
Thank you.
My mother was a very 50s housewife. She made our clothes and did all that sort of stuff and enjoyed it. So leading up to Christmas one year, I was maybe 7, and she was sewing something mysterious that was kind of a rectangle, and then there was something that was kind of like a snake. They were covered with blue fabric, and she wouldn't tell me what they were. Christmas morning, I had gotten a doll crib, and those were the mattress and pillow. And I started to say something, and she took me aside, and I said, "You're Santa Claus." And she said, "What a good detective you are. Now, don't tell your sister." And I have friends who have felt so traumatized when they learned about Santa Claus, and so I learned to do that with my own kids, too.
Okay, let's go to Zoom, and I encourage you to share your stories as you have coffee and maybe enjoy some of the cookies. Richard, do we have anyone wanting to share anything on Zoom? Richard? Okay.
I didn't have my mic on. I don't see anybody else, but there's a story that I can tell. When I was about 8, we went from Oklahoma to Dallas, Texas to have Christmas with my grandmother. And Christmas night, my clever 4-year-old older brother, who would have been about 12, was in a hurry for Christmas morning. That's when all the good stuff happened. So he waited for everybody, all the grown-ups, to fall asleep, and then went through the house and moved up all the clocks by 2 hours. And then when it was 6 o'clock in the morning, according to the clocks, ran through the house, waking everybody up for Christmas. The only problem was my father's wristwatch, which was on his arm. And my father ended up relenting and let everybody get up for Christmas. We were already awake anyway. So that was that Christmas.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you all. There,
We have one, Richard. We have one. Kathy has a
merrily
story.
we scroll along.
Okay, here comes one from Kathy.
Can you hear me?
Speak louder.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
When I was 14, it was the very last Christmas.
Get closer to the mic, Kathy.
When I was 14, it was the very last Christmas that I had before my parents were killed. And what I wanted more than anything was a Madame Alexander doll. I didn't like Barbie. So I got this beautiful doll dressed in a bride outfit. And I still have that doll with me here in Mexico, 60 years later.
That's it from Zoomland.
Thank you. We don't know what's going on up there. There are many ways to be of service here. Our time, treasure, and talents are all necessary components to healthy fellowship. Now is the time in our service when we ask you to share the gift of treasure through pledging and donations. Instructions for payments to the fellowship are on the slide during the announcements and sent out on this week, each week. For people here at the fellowship, we'll pass the basket. If you're new here today or you're struggling to hold things together, let the basket pass you by. Your presence is more than enough of a gift. And while you're considering your gifts to the fellowship, remember that each month LCUUF donates 5,000 pesos or more to an organization in Lakeside community. We share 1/2 of the offering collected at the fellowship each week with that organization. For this month, we're supporting Poco a Poco, which helps people in the San Pedro Itzacan area. One of the services they provide is feeding children and adults who are vulnerable to kidney disease. They now have 6 community kitchens in the area. This year, Poco a Poco has received the gift of a piece of property near Mezcala with a warehouse and is creating a community garden with a kitchen so that people they serve can learn about planting and maintaining a garden, harvesting and cooking all in the same place. We thank you. And now we have our closing hymn, Dark of Winter. Please rise and join in singing.
Surrounds me. Let my thoughts go where they will. Ease my mind profoundly, and then my soul will sing a song, a blessed song of love eternal, gentle darkness I may see more clearly when my heart with sorrow cries, comfort and caress me, and then my soul may hear a voice, a still small voice of love eternal. Darkness when my fears arise, let your peace flow through me.
To close, I want to share words from my earlier reading, Wired for Connection by Aaron Powers. Humans, just like strings of light, are wired for connection. It's when we're wound most tightly that we need the connection most of all. We are at our best when we are plugged into each other. We find our true purpose and spark with others, not alone. And it's in these connections that we shine most brightly. The holidays have always been a mix of joy, stress, expectations, and hope, all tangled together like those strings of light. May you find your own way to untangle the complicated and connect with those who truly bring you joy. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Kwanzaa, Happy Hanukkah. Enjoy. Let us extinguish our chalice with these words, which we read together. Coming up. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we keep in our hearts and share with all the world. Thank you. Our worship is now over. Our service begins. Go in peace and with purpose. May it be so.